My next question to Zafar Masud sir, like we were talking earlier, Dr. Mohit was also talking about economic security. We have been talking about economic growth, economic development, but yes, now we talk about economic security. What do you think are the essential elements for ensuring economic security in a country like Pakistan, particularly in the face of the global volatility and the local socio-economic challenges?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Anil. Thank you, Pri. I'm going to pick up the thread from the last session where the gentleman right in the front, who's on the phone right now, he asked a very provocative question which everybody avoided to answer. Let me just attempt to answer that first. Um, the elite capture will only disappear, in my very humble opinion. And Anil happened to be in that session with me, which happened in PIDE's conference a couple of weeks ago, is about, Dr. Saab was there as well, and he asked a very provocative question as well. Actually, comment. Um, it's all about the Charter of Society, which Dr. Saab was also talking about. It's the resolve by us. So I've written a op-ed on this, where I believe that, this whole paradigm shift could only take place if we as individual, which collectively are the society, will be able to change ourselves. And if we can be able to change ourselves, then only we can force the elite to change their thinking and mindset. Otherwise, not going to happen. I tend to agree with Dr. Banori, what he said, but that'll be a long drawn process. So just to respond to this, as an individuals, we need to change ourselves. We need to make sure that, we, uh, we demand our rights. Uh, Doctor, before I get into the details of your question, I would like to, there is a misnomer attached to economic security, by the way. So when we talk about economic security, the tilt goes towards perhaps a particular institution's budget allocation or something like that. That's not what economic security, as far as I'm concerned. The economic security, in the very basic sense, if I were to put it very crudely, is synonymous with people welfare and development. All our policies lead toward people development and their welfare, and that's about it. It's no longer an option, it is now a necessity, and we have to address that necessity. Um, Without people welfare and development, you cannot achieve economic security. I could have elaborated on it, but in the last session, there was all talk about this, so I'm going to stop here, but I'm going to make a few comments here. Um, as Minister was saying, we as a society, unfortunately, are averse to the idea of wealth creation. A sad situation, but the flip side is that we also need to make sure that that wealth creation is not happening through a rent-seeking model. And what has happened in our society is that we've moved away from taking risks to a rent-seeking model. And the result is that people are becoming richer while the country is becoming poorer. So debt is being accumulated to make people richer. And that's primarily happening because we are confronted with two sorts of deficits, fiscal deficits, structural as well as cyclical. And that's why our inflation is much higher than the others. Apart from, the shenanigans that we have on the currency side and all. But the fact of the matter is that it's cyclical as well, as I'm making that point on purpose because we are exposed to economic security in both dimensions. Cyclical side, because of our dependence on energy, food, and logistics. And on structural side, because we come accumulating debt, taking away the focus from where the subsidies should go. Minister talked about subsidies, being mischanneled. By the way, I'm a big supporter of channelizing the subsidies to export sector. That includes textiles, that includes IT, that includes agriculture. But then we don't have that fiscal space available, and that's happening because of this, primarily because of this structural fiscal deficit, and also because our entire subsidy structure is lopsided. And we have been following a formula of trickle-down subsidies, which has not worked, which has been questioned globally as well, to now bottom-up approach. So do away with this subsidy business of fertilizer, of commodities, of gas, of electricity, and save that money for education, health. In my notes, I had kind of prepared myself to talk about that, but Dr. Zafar and, Dr. Bari already covered that aspect, so I'm not going to dwell into that. But saving money from there should be channelized on two sectors. One on the export that the minister talked about, and the other to the poor and vulnerable, to bring them up, to prepare them for entrepreneurship, to giving them opportunities to become entrepreneurs. We are, by the way, Minister Saab, I just asked him about the taxation on the banking. I know my community will not like it, but frankly speaking, banking is one of the highest tax-paying industries in Pakistan and in the region as well. But having said that, if it takes 40% on our FX revenue to saving the country and channelizing it to the right direction, trust me, I'll be the biggest supporter of it. And it's really fine as long as we are ready to fix that, and it will be equitable. And the other sectors will also step up and show same magnanimity that the banking industry is showing. We want real estate to show the same magnanimity. We want the retailers to show the same magnanimity. And we want the agriculturists to come forward. They are taxed, but they're not paying taxes because we're not collecting taxes from them. I'm very glad the minister has talked about the micro elements, because we, as a society, are too obsessed with the macros. So every discussion that you have, there is a discussion on the macro issues. We do not talk about the micro issues. And on today's forum, Dr. Anil, entrepreneurship, when we talk about, we need to talk about those specific micros. Until we touch those micros, we will not be able to address that main concern which is out there. Although some people don't appreciate her, Mariana Mazzucato, but I don't. Dr. Swan ko pasand hongi bahut. Mujhe to pasand hai, by the way. So she says socializing risk and privatizing profits. And then she says, and it makes a lot of sense, that for you to promote entrepreneurship, the first step has to be taken by the government. And, I'm trying to figure out where I read it. Either it's Piketty or I think I made a reference to that earlier also. Either it's in Piketty's book, Time for Socialization, Socialism, or in, the new map of Daniel Jurgens, where he's actually talked about how Tesla came into being. It came into being because there was a science venture capital fund with the government of USA. And I'm emphasizing again, Makkah of capitalism. They came forth and they gave the said money to Tesla on developing Tesla. I don't know what is this fixation that we have that the government is not supposed to be, supporting these kind of ventures. You support these ventures, and as the minister said, then the private sector will come forth and take it forward. Exactly this is what has happened in Tesla. So government supported it to an extent, to the venture capital extent, but for the scaling, it was the private sector. It cannot and should not happen by the public sector. In our case, we've gone in a different direction altogether, and we have actually asked, the private public sector to work on the scaling as well. Dr. Ali, I'm going to stop here if you want me to. Uh, I just want to make one comment, which I can do later as well.
You can make the comment, then I'll go with
Okay.
Dr. Chauhan.
So just to wrap up, to my mind, on the economic security front and entrepreneurship in that context, the important elements which are out there and I would say low-hanging fruit are the is energy, and in specific, it is the E&P sector. It's food, which is agriculture, and it is logistics. These three are big sectors where the entrepreneurs should look at. And to my mind, there are two types of entrepreneurs which we require at this stage. One, people with the venturesome, and the people which are in the social entrepreneurship. The second area which has to be looked at is human capital, is population, and gender balance. So we need to fix the gaps there, and there is a big opportunity out there for everybody. I mean, just to quote a number, our population growth is 2.55% as opposed to world average of 1.12%. While it's a threat, it's an opportunity too for the entrepreneurs. Our births to death rate is 3.96 times per second, as opposed to the average of the globe of half of it. So while it's a danger, this thing, but we need to make sure that the schooling system is there, the health is there, and then there is an opportunity for the entrepreneurs to look at it as an opportunity, not as a threat. The third one is the climate change. And the climate financing and solution, especially at the back of the data, is something that we can capitalize on the technology. And last but not the least, we are suffering with the weak governance structure. An institution needs to be built in. Now, the entrepreneurs doesn't have to play a role there, but the government needs to make sure that these institutions are built. The institutions, for example, regulators, for example, specialized entities, and they will then give the opportunities for the entrepreneurs to perform and deliver.
Thank you, Zafar. And you're absolutely right when you say that we have to focus our shift from the macro to the micro. And Zafar, how do you envision enhancing the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Pakistan to foster innovation? Like two top strategies.
Yeah. So to begin with, we certainly need startup venture capital. And I'm not it's again it's a misnomer. People feel that we're just confining it to the technology. I'm not talking about the technology per se. I'm actually, my canvas is much more wider than the technology itself. It could be a supply chain of textiles, it could be IT, it could be agriculture, or logistics for that matter. These are the main paradigm shift required in the industries where small entrepreneurs need to enter and work. For that, the starting point, unfortunately, is not the private sector, as in terms of setting up that infrastructure, the venture capital. The government has to step up and prioritize, as I said in my earlier long response to your short question, that we need to make sure that we create the necessary space and channelize our resources to the right place. And that channelization has to be done when we withdraw the subsidies from those sectors where it's going wasted, to the sectors, which is venture capital. And then, Dr. Saab, there is no, the second one you've asked me, I mean, there is no escaping but education. And I lump the health piece with it because of stunting and all those challenges which are out there. There is no escaping from that. These are the two areas where, in order to make sure that our, two-third is our youth bulge, to channelize them in the right direction, these are the two aspects on which the government needs to work on. They have to start with this, and then the private will pick up and take it on from there, perhaps in the PPP mode,
Right.
which is the right way to go, in my opinion.
Rightly said, Zafar. And you're right in terms of that state need to create that kind of ecosystem.
Mr. Zafar Masud, President Bank of Punjab, Pakistan.